Good evening, folks. Ron Motta here, welcoming you to a stellar edition of Activate Worcester. We're filming this as a post-primary election, which we just went through here in the Worcester area and I guess throughout the state yesterday. And we're going to be discussing that a bit. And our guest is the fellow we've had 7, 8, 9 times. He's our political pundit, Jay Givan. And Jay will be providing some interesting statistical analyses of what did go on and what didn't go on yesterday as well. And the next time he's going to be making an appearance will be after the big election in November. And that's going to be for all the marbles. It's going to be huge. You've heard that expression before, but it will be. And I will get on my little podium for 10 seconds here. No excuse not to have your voice heard in November, period, and conversation. Show up, period, you can do it. There's people that'll drive you to the polls, etc. And if you don't want to leave the house, you can get what they call an absentee ballot. And all you have to do is contact City Hall. They will be more than happy to make provisions for you. You could stay home nice and warm, no problem, and still have your voice recorded. But don't not vote. The stakes are much too high this coming November. That being said, let's retro to what happened yesterday. And Jay, some thoughts.
This thing, it's so politically convoluted. You would think that a state that's so one-sided, red or blue, would have a very small but galvanized and unified opposition. Not in this state. When you have so many Democrats that they're actually running in the Republican primaries, like Chris Rodham-Doty. Hillary Clinton supporter spent a lot of his own money against Jeff Deal, who doesn't have any money, but he's the Trump-endorsed guy. I was speaking with Tracy Lavorne last night, around 5 in the afternoon.
And just for those who are unfamiliar with who Tracy was, please.
She ran for Congress against Jim McGovern 2 years ago and 4 years ago. So we always chit-chat a little bit. Mm-hmm. She said, so what are your predictions? I nailed the Deal-Doty race. Everybody else is pretty much unopposed. But I was totally shocked by the Joe Petty-Robin Kennedy race.
It's a shocker.
I thought Petty would be 56, 58 to 42, 44. I had no idea that Robin Kennedy would, let alone win, and never mind by the margin she made. I was talking with some people on the WRCC last night, on the Worcester Republican City Committee. I was saying that, Joe Petty, he may have run a flat-footed campaign. He indirectly got trashed from that really nasty postcard that got sent out, trashing Donna Colorio. But he's also of a very old-fashioned, archaic demographic within the Democrat Party. Mm-hmm. He's straight, he's white, he's male, and he's 60 years old. And you look at Mike Capuano, 4 years ago, that same demographic, he got bounced by Ayanna Pressley, one of the squad members. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, he's going to have an interesting year next year.
Petty will.
No, Petty will.
Sure. It's an interesting parallel that you draw between Robin Kennedy, Miss Robin Kennedy, and our other little friend from Boston, Miss Presley. And maybe you can get into that a little bit. As an overview, as you all know, we got hit with almost a tropical rainstorm yesterday. 5, 6 inches, whatever the final total was. It was huge. And there's no doubt that it kept the numbers down. It's also true that it was the day after Labor Day, and it's also true that people really don't read the TNG, the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, with the
They're
kind
still
of
in business.
regularity that they used to. And it has very little clout. Years ago, it had a lot of clout. And it would beat the drum and tell people, make sure you get out and vote, and these are the candidates. They used to do a very good job with that. Now the buzz was a hum, if you will. And there were people that, and I was warden over at Precinct 2, there were people that came in only because they saw the signs outside the polling place. They were not aware that there was a primary. Now, I'm not naive. I know primaries generally are not exactly well-attended affairs. Unless there's a local election that's really, really hot and it draws people out because there's all sorts of swords being, used on both sides. There wasn't that kind of a situation. You didn't have any specific issues that were being discussed, like the CPA, which is something we'll be getting into in a minute. But still, folks, it's unacceptable. We had in the city way less than 15% of all the people who were eligible to vote. It was somewhere between 1 out of 11, 1 out of 12, whatever it was, which is just terrible, absolutely terrible. And it shows that people, little by little, continue to feel this is not important. And as we've talked about in this program many, many times, the real action is in the streets. It's in your local people, your district counselors, your school committee people, etc. And it's not like Archie Bunker, he only votes in the big one. Well, that's nice.
Yeah, Nixon 60.
Yeah, that's right. Nixon 60, good. So that being said, that's where it's at. Now, the downside of that is that if you have a certain dynamic where the weather is bad and there's not a lot of interest, you can get a candidate that doesn't have a shot, that's underfunded, if you want to call it that, and so forth, and basically unknown, but has a real hardcore base. Whereas the competitor figures this is a joke, no big deal, and sits on his or her laurels and gets their respective doors blown off. And this way you can get a fringe person in that really has no business in that position. That happened in New York several years ago, where there was a local congressman who had been in the job, 4, 5, 6 terms, whatever it is, didn't bother to campaign. And a good old white guy, no big deal. You've seen a million of them before. He was going against this Puerto Rican bartender, no money behind her, no nothing, named Sandy Ocasio, the now infamous or famous or both AOC. And she had, again, nobody showed up except her people and blew this guy's doors right off the hinges. Okay. Back to Petty. Petty, maybe because we know him so well in the city, he's been mayor a long time and, and head of the school committee as the job is. He was everywhere. I mean, I was telling Jay this earlier. I was at about 6 different events over the last 7 or 8 weeks. Mass Pirates, Polar, the Polar ball games with the Woo Sox, and other events and so on and so forth. And Joe was right there. He was everywhere, shaking hands and doing all the old style retail politicking. I thought it was going to be a blowout. I had not heard very much about this Robin Kennedy. I had seen, some posters on her and everything else. And I know that when we did our tapes last night in our precinct, I couldn't get over it. Petty lost. But I figured maybe it's an anomaly. And by the time I got home and saw what was really happening citywide, bye-bye, Joe. That was it. Now, The thing of it is, the person that Robin Kennedy probably will be succeeding is Harriet Chandler, who's been there a long, long time. And, she's from another generation and so forth, a distinguished lady. And instead, what we now have is a very woke young woman who wants to shake things up. In fact, tell us some things about her.
If you are the company you keep, she is going to be as woke and far lunatic, fringe, deranged, anti-American liberal as Maura Healey. She's very good friends with Atal Hajian, who's the Albanian communist from District 5, who she's endorsed by Sunrise Worcester, which is basically the local chapter of something or other Sunrise. They want to ban fossil fuels by 2030. Atal is anti-gas station. She doesn't want new gas stations coming into the city. And most gas stations come with a C-store, convenience store. So she's essentially doesn't want to serve fuel to an expanding city. She doesn't want to create jobs. She doesn't want to create the tax revenue coming into the city because she needs to be a good little leftist and block fossil fuels. She has said cars are not a public good, so she's not going to fix the roads. And somebody like Atal, who supports the CPA, which is a 1.5%, I think.
Let's
but
hold that.
we'll get back to that.
That gets its own little slot.
If you're of the far left and you support this candidate, and that candidate has admitted or publicly broadcast she's holding a Worcester candidate holding fundraisers in Boston and running the Beacon Hill area that promote drag queen events. She's not a cultural conservative. She's not a fiscal conservative. She's coming across as at the state level in AOC, a radical leftist in the mold of Maura Healey. And Maura Healey, she says she wants to cut taxes. You know what she's really going to be. If you want to keep your paycheck, you can keep your paycheck.
Indeed. Now, Maura Healey is, she's driven. She's been driven from the first time she got into politics. And she is as much of an anti-MAGA Trump person as you'll ever find. Which, if you're watching this show and you say, well, I hate Trump too, well, okay, you may want to consider voting for her. But think about it a little bit. She made her bones as an attorney general, suing the living hell, among other things, out of for-profit colleges, which is another subject for another day. Then she became one of the most aggressive attorney generals suing the government, and more specifically, Donald Trump, and takes deep bows about it to this day. And I saw her interviewed last night or this morning, whenever they shot it, and she was asked, well, what do you think about your competitor, Jeff Deal? And she said, what is there to say? Jeff Deal is a total MAGA person, total Trump supporter, and do we want Donald Trump in our state? Heavens, no. We want somebody like you, Maura, because you are a total, solid Biden person, okay? And again, I get on my soapbox with this. If you're real happy with the direction of this country, if you're happy with the prices you're paying at the pump, and may I say something? Everybody gets upset about paying $4 or $5. Oh, now it's $3.50. Ain't that wonderful? But when you think about it, you pay a lot more than just for gas, okay? What are you paying for hamburger? What are you paying for chicken? What are you paying for milk? What are you paying for eggs? What are you paying for all sorts of items that you buy through Walmart or through Amazon online to save a buck? Every one of these things is up pretty damn close to 50% or double. So when they give you pablum that says, oh, inflation is up 7.2, no, it's a lot more than that because they play with these numbers. You know what inflation is better than anybody in the world does because you know how tough it is for you to be making ends meet now. And I don't care if you're making 25,000 or 250,000, okay? You know what's going on. And what's my point? She's part of the mentality that's brought this to you, plain and simple. And what the Democrats are doing, they're using the image of Donald Trump as the stalking horse. He's the Antichrist. He's the one that we're rallying around, and if you're pro this guy, you have to be part of the devil, one of his disciples. Well, Jeff Deal is not a devil, but he is a disciple of Donald Trump. And not so much Donald Trump the person, but Donald Trump the president. And let's take a look at where this country was 3-4 years ago from any perspective you want to use, any perspective. You fill in the blank. I don't want to eat up another 10 minutes talking about it, but it's very, very simple. That's what Donald Trump was all about: fiscal conservatism, personal liberties, and so on and so forth. That's where Jeff Deal is at. It's as simple as that. This will be an interesting race because there's a huge dichotomy between these two people. In English, one's a communist, one's a capitalist. And those two do not converge. There's just no way. They're antithetical to each other. So if you kind of like what's happening in the country and in this city, it's real simple. Continue to vote for those folks. If you don't like it, to paraphrase what he said 6 years ago, what do you have to lose? So anyway, off my soapbox. Back to...
Well, I'll give credit to Robin Kennedy for one thing, and she won. I mean, she was the underdog in the race. Who ever heard of her?
Absolutely.
I think Joe Petty was complacent. Think about Robin who? And whatever. And she just, day by day, she
solidified her
collected
base.
one little commie or radical leftist, woke liberal after the other.
Yep.
And then boom. She is going to be a nightmare. A rubber stamp for Maura Healey. Assume Maura Healey wins. I like Jeff. He's fundamentally on the conservative side. He's outnumbered. If you look at the state registration, it's 9% Republican, 32% Democrat, 57% Independent, and the remaining 2%. And that's all kind of your oddballs, but they fall in place. Doty wasn't going to win. I've seen a lot of comments and a number of social media pages that the Doty voters will not vote for Deal. And this crap has been going on since 1964 when Rockefeller and George Romney, Mitt's father, decided, ew, I don't like Goldwater. We're going to sit this out and let LBJ get elected. And you know what happened with him? And it's the same thing over and over and over. 4 years ago when Jeff Deal ran against the fake Indian Liz Warren for Senate, Charlie Bake and all the Rhino establishment, and they ran like...
Wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot
right,
pole.
because they don't want to help him. Because he's Trump. We're not going to support Trump. They didn't support Jay McMahon for AG. They didn't support Tracy Lavorne. Tracy had very little shot at even breaking 40%. But the fact that you're not helping, the rhinos in this state, just they love to undermine conservatives. They're not team players. And as Rush Limbaugh always said, the rhinos, they're not opposed to big government. They're just opposed to people with a D after the name running big government. And so it gets frustrating.
It's quite true. It's quite true. The other thing, just thinking about it for a second, you have, Robin, you have AOC, you have Ayanna Pressley. The common thread with every one of them is they unseated a man. And these were older white guys who, just like you said, maybe was sitting on their laurels, and they really didn't recognize that this young girl, okay, this lefty young girl, has a shot, underfunded, because every one of them has been underfunded. And the entire AOC group, this one, and many, many others around the country, it's that same profile, which is very unsettling in a lot of ways. I have no problem. There are some wonderful, wonderful females that are running and doing a great job.
Christy Noem.
Fabulous, and many others like her. Nikki Haley is strong, and there's many other ladies that are just spectacular. But they're older. They tend to be mid-40s and up.
They're in that Gen X range.
Yeah, exactly. But the young wackos, which is my words, okay, sue me. That's my interpretation of where they're coming from. 'Cause I'm kind of a funny old guy, okay? I believe in America. Sounds like a line from The Godfather, the opening line, but that's true. That's how I feel about it. Love this country, love the Constitution, love its strengths, and realize that it's one of the only cultures that's ever really tried to improve on its weaknesses. That's what America is to me, land of opportunity still. That's why they're swimming across rivers to get in here. They're not going to any of these other wonderful places that supposedly are, just as woke as can be. There's not a lot of lines of people trying to get into Iran and Iraq and other lovely spots as well. But one thing that we also have to address, because it's important for this city, is something called the CPA. And the CPA in this case is not some guy with an eye shade. Tell them what CPA is.
The CPA stands for Community Preservation Act. It began around 2002, thereabouts, around 2000.
About 20 years ago, roughly.
I'd say maybe 40% of the towns have enacted it. It's basically a surcharge on the tax levy, which then gets filtered down to your particular tax bill. It goes to fund, I think, open space, I think parks at this point, and subsidized housing, as if this city doesn't have enough of it. We are at Worcester is 35% above the state mandate of 10%.
That's right.
So when you have 13.5% subsidized housing, and this isn't some conservative word, it's you going to the DHCD's website, you have a little link that says SHI inventory, and it stands for subsidized housing inventory.
Yep.
So the state calls it subsidized. We're 35% above the state mandate. We have a 20+% poverty rate. We have a 41-year high in inflation. The occupancy rate in businesses is expanding. People can't afford anything. I don't know what the particular numbers are for this year, but last year when Greg Stratman was running, he had mentioned that you take a $268,000 house, which I think was the average in Worcester. You have a tax bill of whatever it was.
3,500, 4,000, something.
Something like that. Yeah. It's 52% higher across the state and a similarly valued house. So Worcester is overtaxed with all the other problems that President Biden has created. By the way, if you disagree with Joe Biden, you're an enemy of the state.
Amen, brother.
But in lockstep with Mara, Robin, Attell. So it's a surcharge on the tax levy, and if you can't afford a 41-year high in inflation, you can't afford yet another property tax, which is basically, it's a cute little trick for a Prop 2.5 override. I mean, it's not the same thing, but when it's coming out of your wallet, a tax increase is a tax increase.
Guys, the reason we wanted to throw this into this show before it ended,
And it doesn't fix anything either.
you're going to be asked to vote. It's a referendum. It'll be on the ballot, not obviously yesterday, because that's a primary. It'll be on the ballot in November, okay? And this is a one-shot deal. You either thumbs up or thumbs down. Now, it's very subtle. The name is nice and vanilla, You know, who's not going to be for that? And for
The Affordable Care
it's a
Act.
beautiful thing, and there's going to be nice things happening in the city, and here's the way they're going to sell it. Guys, it's only, first of all, it's 1.5%, but it's not 1.5% on everything. It's 1.5% on commercial enterprises, which that's good. We want to knock them as hard as we can. And also 1.5% on homeowners. Hello, if you're a renter, you don't have to worry about it, okay? And the caveat
Well, your
is,
rent will go up.
the caveat, as they tell you, is that that 1.5% can be brought down based on your income if you're a senior, blah, blah, blah. And the good news is that the state is going to match those funds. And those funds, it's going to be put into this pot that's going to be done, you know, it'll be things like trees and different monuments being cleaned up. Who's against that, okay?
So tell that to the towns who went in expecting matching funds and may have gotten 18% or 25 cents on the dollar.
Yep.
You're not going to get it.
Well, here's the, you know, the devil is in the details. You've heard that all your life. And there's a lot of details with this that they keep quiet. Number one, it's open-ended. It's not being done for a year or 3 years so we can look at it and see if it's any good and then continue it or kick it out or modify it. Once it's there, it's there. That's item number one. Item number two is that where is to say that it's going to stop at 1.5%? It can go to 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. And I've seen some estimates on it. It'll cost the average taxpayer, or excuse me, the average homeowner, somewhere between $75 and $100 and maybe more. And it's going to grow. But now, what do we do with this pot of money? Okay, here's where it gets to be fun. There will be a blue ribbon grouping that will be put together that will come up with different ideas as to how to spend this money. It then goes not to the city manager or the mayor, it goes to the city council. And they all get together and they all want a piece. And I would if I were on it for my particular area. And here we go. So you're going to have people that aren't contributing money that are going to be absolutely accessing this money to begin with. And it's going to be, as the old adage goes, taxation without
And where did all this
representation.
COVID ARPA money disappear to?
CPA is what they call it, folks. It's going to be on the ballot, and you need to get out there, read about it, and shoot it down, because at this point, it's dangerous and it's wrong. It's not right for us. It's as simple as that. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Bad news. And as I said, there's a lot of voting that needs to be done. Please do it. And I thank you for watching tonight. Jay, thank you for joining us and adding some clarity to a very unclear world that we're in right now. It's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, thank you for watching. Speaking of thank yous, please watch us again next week. We'll have a good show for you as well.